Hello, I'm Kate Williams. I'm the CEO of 1% for the Planet, and I had the great pleasure of speaking with Yvon Chouinard virtually a few weeks ago. I was calling in from my home on the ancestral Abenaki lands, now known as Vermont, and Yvon was calling in from his home on the ancestral Chumash lands, now known as California. And the conversation was such a wonderful opportunity to connect with one of the founders of 1% for the Planet. And for those of you who don't know, 1% for the Planet is a global community that exists to ensure that our planet and future generations thrive. And we do this by inspiring both businesses and individuals to support environmental nonprofits through membership and everyday action. And we make environmental giving both easy and effective through our partnership advising, our impact storytelling, and of course, our third-party certification. So it's a fabulous community. And you may already know Yvon as the founder of Patagonia. He is also an itinerant adventurer, a passionate activist, an avid fly fisherman, and of course, an iconoclastic businessman. And our conversation ranged from business to fly fishing and everything in between. And it was shaped by a set of wonderful questions that came from our global community. So with that, let's go to the conversation. I know last time we spoke, I think it was just on the phone, and you had just come in from surf fishing. So I gather there's been some stormy weather where you are, but I hope you have been still getting outside.
Yeah, I have. I've been surfing a little bit and playing tennis. I just got a vaccine, so I've got a little longer leash now.
Oh, good. Great. Well, I know people are really eager to sort of hear your thoughts. And in preparation for this conversation, we reached out to our community and asked them what they wanted to ask you. And you may or may not know this, but you in your book and your example as a businessman continues to be one of the greatest inspirations for companies to join. And so not surprisingly, in just 24 hours, we got more than 300 questions. Oh. And don't worry, we're not going to hit you with all of those. There were some great questions, and our team and your team have done a great job going through them and helping us to sort of pick the most common questions, the most engaging questions. So that's what we have on deck for you today. So you ready to dive in?
Yeah.
All right. So this comes from a business member, and this business member says, I work for a 1% for the Planet business member restaurant group. And it seems like you, Yvon, made a lot of decisions early on that seemed to make poor business sense, but while they were the right thing to do, could easily have put you out of business before they paid off. So the simple question is, how do you get buy-in on these scary short-term decisions from stakeholders, and more broadly, how the hell did you manage to stay in business? End quote.
Well, I am the stakeholder. That's pretty simple. It's not like I'm a public corporation and I have a board of directors telling me what to do. So, it's a privately held company, so we can do whatever we want. And everybody knows I never wanted to be a businessman. And once I decided I was going to be a businessman, I decided to do it on my own terms. I have a history of breaking the paradigms. And, when I was a little kid, I always felt like, don't play someone else's games because you're going to lose. So invent your own games. And so that's the way we've run our business. And so we've done some wild things. Yeah. Like a few years ago, let me give you an example. A few years ago on Black Friday, one of my employees called and said, hey, I got an idea. Why don't we give all our revenue away on Black Friday? So give all our sales away to environmental causes. And I thought, well, let me see. Last year we did about 2.5 million in our own stores. I said, yeah, why not? Let's do it. So that was like 3 days before. And so we went, just online, and social media just picked it up, and they called me on Black Friday at 3 in the afternoon, and we'd already done 6 million. And then by 6 o'clock at night, we've done over $10 million. And I'm thinking, this is going to kill Christmas. I got to give away $10 million and everybody's already bought all their stuff. But you know what? 60% of the sales were to two people who had never bought from us before. That's 40,000 people, 40,000 new customers we got. And the sales after Black Friday just kept going up and up and up all through Christmas and after Christmas. And they haven't gone down since practically. And so, I could have spent $5 million on 30 seconds in the Super Bowl, and it would have been a waste of money. I mean, it was the best thing I could have possibly done as a marketing ploy, but we didn't do it as a marketing ploy. We just did it because it was fun.
That's so great. And it seems like, I mean, part of what I take from that is, you take the risks for the right reasons. And I think one part of the story that I also remember is that the employee that called you was not a senior seasoned employee. It was, someone young and
Yeah.
and had a great idea. And so also you created a company where those great ideas could bubble up to the top.
Well, yeah, let me give you another example. The last time I gave you an interview, I ended up saying, vote the assholes out. Remember that?
I sure do.
And you asked, are you sure you want to say that? I said, yeah. And,
I think I might have said, are you sure that they'll let you say that?
well, as you probably know, during this last election, my daughter okayed another idea from an employee to put a little hang tag on our stand-up shorts, on the back of the stand-up shorts that said, vote the assholes out. And we never said anything to anybody about it, but somebody in Denmark found out, and then he went global. And I've never met anyone who hasn't seen that.
Yeah.
I mean, tens of millions of people. And in fact, one journalist, and it was in all the front pages in the newspapers in Italy. One journalist said, this is going to take 1 or 2 points off of Trump's ratings. When people ask me, well, aren't you afraid to do that? I said, well, choose your asshole. And for us, it's whoever is denying climate change, whichever politician is denying climate change.
Well, I think that's great stories and feedback for, a really great question. And I guess sort of related question, in the case of like the Black Friday example, the 100% of sales went to environmental nonprofits. And that's how the 1% for the Planet model works too, that 1% of sales goes to nonprofits. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts on, what makes a strong nonprofits and what does Patagonia look for in deciding which nonprofits to support, and really at a higher level too, like why is it important to support nonprofits?
Well, everyone has different criteria. And, a few years ago, we changed our mission statement to, we're in business to save our home planet. That's our mission statement. So then we had to ask ourselves, what does that mean for us? And so how's it going to change the company? And so we had to go throughout the whole company and ask every single person, what does that mean for what you do for the company, your job? And so basically we broke it down into four or five different categories. And, one was to get rid of the Trump administration. We felt like that was the strongest thing we could do.
Mm-hmm.
Another one was to promote regenerative organic agriculture because, we get a lot of materials from agriculture. And so, we've been doing organic cotton for a long, long time, but using organic cotton doesn't do the world any good. It just causes less damage. But But if you go to regenerative organic, which means no tilling and using cover crops and compost and then it actually builds topsoil, then you're actually growing a much more responsible cotton. So we're using, promoting regenerative organic agriculture for capturing carbon and then a lot of the problems of the planet is there's too many of us consuming too much. And so we're working on campaigns to actually tell people not to consume so much. So we're starting to we're going to be renting an alpine ski gear, clothing, because it sits in the closet 11 months of the year. And so why buy a new outfit every year or something? Whereas you can rent the latest thing. So renting is a responsible thing to do. We're selling our worn Patagonia stuff through Worn Wear program. So working on, cutting down on consumption. And then we've gotten away from working on organizations that work on the symptoms. If you really want to save the polar bear, you got to change the climate. You can spend a lot of money doing nothing, working on symptoms, and so we've really changed a lot of the way that we're giving. And the other thing I'd say is you just, follow your heart, whatever you're really interested in, make it fun. I mean, it's fun to give money away.
Yeah. And I think, you've brought that in a couple times. And I think it's so important. I mean, you've been in this important game for the long haul. And that you've kept it fun for yourself. And that's how you stay in it as a leader, as a business professional, by making sure that even as you're making the hard decisions and driving the big change, you do keep it fun. As you can imagine, a lot of our community knows that you're a fly fisherman. So I do have a question for you from that group. So shifting gears a little bit to a fly fishing question for you. Are you ready? So did you really use a pheasant tail nymph for an entire fly fishing year? And if so, how many species of fish did you catch?
Well, I did about 5 years ago. I decided to use a pheasant tail and partridge soft hackle, which kind of imitates the emerger stage of an insect. And I used only one pattern for the whole year in different sizes. And I caught Atlantic salmon, steelhead, trout, bonefish, perch.
That works pretty well for you.
Well, yeah, it's one of my favorite sayings is the more you know, the less you need. And I really got to know that fly. And I got to learn how to give action to that fly because trout are predators, just like grizzly bears. Grizzlies love it when you run, right? And
That's for sure.
yeah, so I fish it as a little emerger, a little insect on the surface, trying to get out of its little shuck. And he's halfway in, halfway out, and he's wiggling around and stuff like that. If you can imitate that action, it's a done deal for the trout. It's a lap dance for the trout. And and I found it's changed my life. I still use that fly for probably 80 or 90% of my fishing. And I compare it to Italian cooking, classic Italian cooking. You're limited to 5 ingredients. They don't do spaghetti and meatballs. In fact, my favorite pasta recipe uses 3 ingredients. It uses blue cheese, milk, and pasta. That's it. Yeah. And it's fantastic. You just melt the blue cheese in the milk, and you can't find a better pasta. So, but when you're simplifying something like that, each ingredient has to be perfect. You know, you got to use real tomatoes or whatever if you're making a tomato sauce. So with this fly, if you tie it on a dry fly hook, it doesn't work. It has to be on a 2x heavy hook. So every little part of the fly has to be right. And then when it's all right, you catch more fish than you've ever caught in your life.
That's so great. And it just makes my mind think of one thing you had said before when we were talking, just how you really see yourself as part of nature, not separate from nature. And it seems like in a way you kind of became the fly and really were able to think about how to sort of do that. And that's a really important and valuable and often lost skill that I am sure, informs, a lot of what it fuels your commitment to the planet.
Well, it keeps me fishing because every time I go out, I learn a little bit more. And so now I feel like I have a really deep knowledge about using that fly. And this last year, I've gone down a whole size from a normal, say, size 14. Now I use mostly a size 16, which is a tiny little fly. But I have the confidence that it works, and it works better than a 14, which you got to have the confidence about that. But anyway.
I love that. Well, I'm sure all of our fly fishing public will appreciate that and will, I imagine, be trying experiments of their own like that.
You can go online on Google, and I show how to tie it.
Oh, perfect. That's great. Well, we can probably provide a link for that at some point. I'm going to use that as a pivot back to the more sort of business 1% oriented questions and ask a question about disinformation. So as you well know, there's a lot of disinformation driving the resource extraction agenda and other aspects of the agenda. How do you think we overcome this move towards disinformation that is in many ways really damaging our democracy and our planet?
Well, other than changing the whole school system, I don't know how to answer that. It's I find that a lot of the problems with disinformation or people, I believe in the Socratic method of solving problems, which is going deep enough so that you really get to the cause of something. So you got to ask, question after question. So one question leads to another question, another question. Finally, you get to the true causes of something. And that's the way I educate myself, and that's the way we run our company as far as trying to ascertain how to clean up our act. So I gave you a little example of, that we used to use organic cotton, but now we use regenerative organic, going deeper and deeper. And, Americans we're so fooling ourselves. Like, for instance, we think we're the greatest country in the world. We're number one in all these things. We're number 17th in the world in quality of life.
Yeah.
And most of the ones above us are socialistic democracies. And we're so afraid of socialism, we equate it with communism. I mean, we're just kidding ourselves. And we constantly trying to reinvent the wheel. I mean, it's we're not deep thinkers, and it drives me crazy to see that people taking a stand when they're really ignorant on the subject.
Yeah. And so many of our the ways we receive information now, which I know you have steered clear of, but so many of the ways we're scrolling through news and things like that doesn't in any way invite you into a Socratic interaction with that news. You just, you're literally skimming it as opposed to diving in. So going on to another question here. Greenwashing, sort of posing as a business making change is a thing. And what's your take on how we can ensure that businesses are authentic in their push towards sustainability? And, because as consumers are sort of wanting more of this, it can be easy for companies to kind of grandstand and pose. But what do you think are some of the things we need to do to, make sure that businesses are authentic?
Well, there's a lot of that going on, that's for sure. Yeah. A lot of people look at us, and I mean, other companies kind of in trying to compete with us. They're trying to do or say the same things that we are. And a lot of it is greenwashing because they're not going very deep. Uh, there's one company that is touting 2% for the rivers. It's something like that. I don't remember whether it's 2% for fish, 2% for the river. Well, it's not 2% of their sales. It's 2% of their profits, which is a lot less than 2% of their sales. So, if you pick up a jar of juice and it says a portion of this is going to go to saving the rainforest, how much portion of this?
Right.
So I think the young people see through all of this. So I'm not too worried. A lot of this greenwashing is being, people are seeing it.
Right. We certainly see that at 1% for the planet, that the value of our certification of B Corp, of climate neutral is, that it's someone saying, yep, this company actually did make a real commitment. So
Yeah.
that's great. So there is hope in terms of those skeptics. I think it is great that we have young people who are asking all those questions. So, certified 1%, that is one way to be authentic. But we often get the question, and the question came to you in this set: why just 1%? Shouldn't companies be investing more, especially because the planet, the needs are so urgent right now?
Well, that's up to each company. I mean, we give probably 2 or 3%, tell you the truth. I mean, we've been returning our check from the government, we didn't think that tax thing that Trump did was fair, and so we've been putting that back in. So we're, that takes us up to like 2%, and then we're doing more than that. So it's up to you if you want to give more, give more. That's fine.
Right, right. And that we do see that with a lot of our companies as well, that we certify their 1% giving, but then they either start or already have been like doing so many other things, many of which are, beyond the 1% model too. So there's the giving, and then there's the changing how you source your cotton. And so, there's often a whole package of things that a company is doing, which make a big difference together.
Yeah.
So this coming up on our 20th anniversary for 1% for the Planet. So you and Craig Matthews founded it on the banks of the Madison River, where I saw you. I think that may have been the last time I saw you. You founded it back in 2002. And so our 20th anniversary is approaching next year. And looking ahead, what would be your hopes for 1% for the planet for the next 20 years?
Ooh, I can't believe it's been 20 years. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Um, well, I just hope that it grows more and more companies, and more companies realize that it's just good business. I say over and over again that every time we made a decision, because it's the right thing to do, it makes us more money. And I believe in karma. And, like we're going through a tough year right now, but we're doing great. I
Mhm.
must say, even though most of our retail stores are semi-closed, um, it's people are ordering online, and we're doing just fine, thanks. And I think it's because we have loyal customers who believe in what we're doing, and they're choosing to buy from us rather than somebody else. So I just, it's a message that's hard to get across, to tell you the truth. People just don't believe it. And, but that's the way it is. It's just good business.
Yeah. And when you sort of think of companies that are just starting out now, in the way that, well, you were well on your way 20 years ago, but as a company just starting out now, how would you like help them? What advice would you give them to sort of see and really understand that message?
Well, I think my strongest message is, I mean, if you're making a product that's very similar to everyone else's product, you better have a different message. Otherwise, you're going to just be going like this, just headbutting and trying to outmarket them. Or I think, you got to add value to your brand. And there's not, well, first of all, if you can have a business that has a unique product, then you're way ahead. But that's hard to find these days, having a unique product. Uh, so it's, I, I think just joining an organization like 1% puts your product. Yeah, if I needed a lawyer, and I didn't know where to go, and I saw one that was a member of 1%, I'd say, oh, I can trust that person. Um, and people need something to believe in. They need to believe in the companies that they're buying from. And I mean, I have a story. I have a friend, this woman who was driving in the winter in Rock Springs, Wyoming. And Rock Springs is a tough town. And it's 2 in the morning, and she broke down, and she's scared to death. And here comes a guy wearing a Patagonia jacket walking down the street. And she says, I can trust this guy. And he took her in, helped her out. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. So, it sounds like, not only is it that you're doing the right thing for the planet and you're doing what you need to do and to position business to drive change, but that it's also a broader message about what you stand for. Um, what are you, continuing to kind of look ahead at the 20-year, next 20 years? What makes you most hopeful?
oh, I'm not very hopeful at all. Well, things are so grim, but um, I tell you, I did celebrate at this last election. Though we put several $1 million into this last election, not only to get rid of Trump, but to flip the Senate, and it worked. And so but you know what? We got to keep pressure on Biden, because he sounds like he's very committed to saving the planet, but he's going to really be hit up by everybody in the world. So we got to put our own pressure on. It's kind of like he's got to be more afraid of us than he is of the fossil fuel industry. Let's put it that way.
That's great. And it seems like, I mean, what we saw in this election is a lot of people were willing to get out there and vote and get out the vote. So I would take that as something hopeful, just that there were a lot of people who were willing to put in the time to put on that pressure to, and now we need to keep it on. This may be easier for you to answer given what you just said, but what are you most worried about?
Well, climate change is the elephant in the room, you know. There's everything else doesn't matter too much. I mean, there's no, like David Brower said, there's no business to be done on a dead planet.
Mhm.
And that's what we're facing. We're actually facing a dead planet for humans. And, you know, it may not happen in our grandkids' time, but certainly after that it will. And, uh, you know, just on food, I mean, the United Nations says that we need 50% more food by 2050. That's in 29 years. 50% more food. At the same time, we won't have any more topsoil and water. So there you go. It's a crash that's on its way. So we got to do something about that.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. So that's our 20-year project is just, as you were saying, getting more people involved and driving change. So Patagonia has clearly been a very successful business, even though you got into it as a reluctant businessman. Um, is there, if Patagonia hadn't worked out, or if you had do-overs, is there any other business that you would consider starting?
Yeah. Yeah, I would have been in the mariculture. I'd be an oyster farmer or something. And so rather than that, I've gotten into food. So I'm selling mussels and mackerel and things like that. And which you know, if the United Nations tells us that we're going to run out of food, there's the opportunity right there. You know, people may not need $600 ski jackets, but they're going to need to eat. And so that's what I get really excited about right now is growing our food business, which is doing really well, especially since this pandemic. Everybody's ordering online.
Right. And what draws you in particular to the ocean farming, for lack of a better term? I know it's not farming, but from, getting food from the ocean. I know that's a lot of what Patagonia Provisions has focused on.
Well, all the fish that we're using are all things that don't eat other fish. So, you know, mussels, you just leave them alone and they filter the water. And then mackerel are basically algae eaters, and sardines eat plankton. And so we're using fish that are low down on the chain. But as far as ocean farming, I love the idea of farming seaweed, and but we have to be very careful farming fish, whether it's in estuaries. You know, uh, we can make all the mistakes that we made with industrial farming. We can do it in the ocean as well. You know,
Right.
growing salmon by feeding them sardines is a dumb deal. Um, we have to do it right, and we, you know, we can't all live off the fish in the ocean. We're depleting the whole ocean right now, and so we have to start treating the ocean like we're treating the land, and that we have to have marine reserve areas and have international treaties to really protect the ocean.
Hmm. So, Yvonne, final question here, although I will then ask, if there anything that else you want to talk about, but looking ahead, how are you investing in your passions, and, what are your passions and how have they evolved?
Well, I'm 82 years old and I'm getting pretty long in the tooth, and I'm having a hard time surfing these days. Um, I can't climb for shit anymore. My balance is gone. Uh, I've been playing tennis. In fact, I've been playing better tennis than I've ever played.
Oh, that's great.
I've forgotten what all my faults were.
So
I can't remember them.
you don't get mad at yourself anymore. You just play. Oh, that's great.
So yeah, I guess I'm more and more involved in fly fishing, and the whole idea of using it as a metaphor for simplicity and trying to simplify my life. And uh, it's and then business wise, I'm really interested in growing the Patagonia provisions part of the company
Hmm.
and coming out with wacko weird products that out of the blue that no one else is doing, or it could actually do some good for the planet. Trying to do everything every product should be eventually regeneratively and organically grown.
Um, so are there any other, topics or items that you would want to talk about?
Um, Boy, you covered it pretty well, I think.
I know we had a lot of great questions. That our network, as always, kept us on our toes. So
I certainly could talk about my fly for an hour, but
I love that. I think that you've given us some really great takeaways. I would hope that all of us listening are thinking like, what's our version of the pheasant tail fly that we want to really use as a focus to simplify and go deep and learn. And so I really appreciate you sharing that with us.
well, that's a little like the little Zen garden, that has three stones, and the monk is trying to figure out how to elicit the same emotion with two stones. I don't think you can though. Two stones is unbalanced.
That's great. Well, I hope that you have lots of time to get out there with that one fly. So Yvon, thank you so much for being willing to field these questions for our network. I know people appreciate it so much, and just the opportunity to ask them. And I personally always love a chance to talk to you, and can't wait till we can do it again in person. But just really grateful to have this virtual moment.
Well, I'm really proud of you guys and the great work that you're doing, and just keep going. It's really important.
Well, thank you. And I am channeling that from my awesome team who's working so hard every day. I know they'll really appreciate hearing that, because they are awesome, and I know they really value your leadership. So thank you for that.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys in person again.
That sounds great.